The morning after the divorce felt quieter than it should have been. Not the kind of quiet that soothes you, the kind that hums under your skin, reminding you that something's missing. Emma lay awake long before the alarm went off, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily above her. The air felt heavy, thick with a kind of stillness she couldn't quite name. Outside, the early light pressed against the curtains, soft and pale, like it was afraid to enter. She sat up slowly. Her side of the bed looked untouched, neat, sterile. His side still had a small dent in the pillow, a faint trace of his shampoo lingering in the air. She had washed the sheets yesterday, but somehow the memory stayed. The clock read 7:14. On any other day, she would have been making breakfast while he read the news aloud, complaining about the world and laughing at his own sarcasm. Now there was just silence, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the wooden floor as she stood. The kitchen felt too big for one person. 2 coffee mugs still sat on the counter next to the sugar jar. She reached for the white one, hers with a small crack near the handle. She ran her thumb along it, remembering the morning it had broken. He had said, "It's just a cup, Em. You don't have to fix everything." She had laughed then. She didn't now. The coffee maker sputtered to life, the familiar sound filling the air. It smelled the same as always, but something in her chest tightened. She poured herself a cup, added milk. 1 spoon of sugar, stirred slowly, and took a sip. It tasted different. Bitter somehow. Maybe it wasn't the coffee. She stood there holding the mug eyes on the photos still pinned to the fridge, a timeline of smiles and summers and moments that once felt permanent. Their wedding photo was in the middle. She looked younger there, freer. They both did. He was kissing her temple, and she was laughing, that big, unguarded kind of laugh that comes from not knowing how much things can change. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Lisa. "Thinking of you. Call me when you're ready," she typed. "Thanks," then deleted it. Typed, "I'm okay," then deleted that too. In the end, she didn't reply. What was there to say? She set the phone down and took her coffee to the window. Outside, the street was alive, joggers with earbuds, a man walking his dog, a delivery truck rumbling past. The world didn't seem to notice that hers had stopped spinning. For a moment, she envied them, their motion, their purpose. But mostly she felt tired, a deep, bone-heavy tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep. She leaned her forehead against the cold glass. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed high, unfiltered, pure. It was the sound of something she used to know. The tears didn't come right away. They arrived quietly like uninvited guests, soft and slow. She let them. She didn't wipe them off, didn't rush to hide them. They just fell. When she finally sat down, she realized she was holding her mug with both hands like she needed the warmth to prove she was still here. The coffee had gone cold. Her eyes drifted to the shelf above the counter. There was a small plant there, half alive. He used to forget to water it. She used to remind him. Now, neither of them did. The leaves looked tired, curling inward. She reached up, touched the soil. Dry. She got a glass of water and poured it in, watching the dirt darken slowly, the roots drinking again. There, she whispered, not sure if she was talking to the plant or herself. The sound of her own voice startled her. It had been so long since the house had heard it. The clock ticked again. 02 now. She picked up her phone and, without really planning, opened her gallery. Photo after photo blurred past birthdays, dinners, vacations, small things that had once meant everything. She stopped on one picture, the two of them, on a rainy afternoon, umbrellas, forgotten, laughing in the middle of a street. He had looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense. "Where did we go?" she whispered. The truth was, they hadn't gone anywhere. They'd just stopped meeting in the middle. Conversations had turned into updates, kisses, into habits, love, into a kind of polite distance. And one day she'd looked across the dinner table and realized she was lonely, even while sitting beside him. The papers had been easy to sign, neat, final, efficient. The pain came after. Now, standing in the middle of what used to be their home, Emma felt the ache of absence in everything she touched. Yet beneath it, something else stirred, faint, uncertain, but there. Relief. It wasn't loud or liberating. It was small, quiet, like a sigh at the end of a long sentence. The kind that says it's over, but you're still here. She took a deep breath and looked around, the sunlight finally spilling fully into the room, catching on the edges of things. It didn't make the place warmer, but it made it real. On the fridge, one of the photo corners started to peel. Without thinking, she reached up and pressed it back. Then she stopped. Maybe she didn't need to. Emma pulled the photo off completely, held it in her hand for a moment, then placed it gently in the drawer. Not thrown away, just put aside. The space it left on the fridge looked strange, like a missing tooth. But it was honest. She poured herself another cup of coffee, this time without sugar. It was still bitter, but less surprising now. She sat at the table, letting the warmth seep into her fingers, the sunlight catching in her hair. It wasn't peace yet, but it wasn't pain anymore either. Somewhere between the two, she found the faintest sense of beginning. And for the first time in months, she whispered a word she hadn't used in a long time. Maybe. It took Emma 3 days to answer Lisa's text. The first 2, she'd opened it again and again, her thumb hovering over the screen before she locked the phone and set it down. It wasn't that she didn't want to see her friend, it was that she didn't want to be seen. There's a difference. On the 3rd morning, she woke up to sunlight crawling across the floorboards, a strip of gold cutting through the room. It hit her right in the eyes, warm and insistent, as if the world had decided it was done letting her hide. So she texted back. "Okay. Breakfast?" Lisa replied within seconds. "Diner on 3rd, 10 o'clock. I'm not taking no for an answer." Emma smiled, the first real smile in weeks, because that was so like Lisa, the kind of friend who never asked if you needed saving, just when. The diner hadn't changed. Same checkered floor, same coffee that tasted faintly like burnt toast, same waitress with the voice that could cut through thunder. Emma slid into the booth by the window and exhaled. It felt strange being out in public again, like trying on a body that didn't quite fit. Lisa arrived a few minutes later, wearing her usual energy-oversized sunglasses, messy bun, and a confidence Emma had always admired. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged her tight without ceremony. "You look," Lisa began, pulling back to study her, "like someone who hasn't been outside in 3 days. 4, Emma said. Lisa laughed loud and genuine. "Well, welcome back to the land of the living." They ordered pancakes and coffee. Lisa talked about her new job, her neighbor's annoying dog, and a date that went nowhere. Emma listened, nodding, grateful that her friend didn't make her talk about him. Not yet. When the food came, the smell of syrup and butter hit her, and for the first time in a long while she was hungry. She didn't realize how much she'd missed the small, ordinary act of enjoying something. Lisa cut her pancakes in half like she always did, and said between bites, "You know what's weird? You look lighter. Lighter, yeah. Like, you're sad, but it's the kind of sad that's finally moving somewhere." Emma blinked. "That's poetic for you." Lisa smirked. "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to protect." They both laughed quietly at first, then louder, until people at the next table looked over. Emma didn't care. The sound felt good, foreign in her own mouth. After breakfast, they walked along the street. The air smelled like rain, that soft electric scent right before the first drop. People passed them with coffee cups and shopping bags and hurried lives. Lisa talked about everything and nothing, a rhythm Emma had missed. She caught herself smiling at shop windows at a little boy trying to chase a pigeon, at the reflection of her own face in the glass. She didn't look happy exactly, but she looked alive. They stopped at a small bookstore tucked between a flower shop and a bakery. Lisa pulled her inside without asking. The bell above the door chimed, and the smell of paper and dust wrapped around them. The man behind the counter, tall maybe mid-30s with dark hair and a quiet kind of presence, looked up from his book and smiled. "Good morning," he said. His voice was calm, the kind that made you slow down. Lisa grinned at Emma, whispering, "See, the world is already giving you meet cutes." Emma rolled her eyes. "Please don't start. I'm just saying," the man reads. "That's half the battle won." Emma wandered to the back shelves, while Lisa browsed near the front, muttering to herself about book covers and fate. Her fingers trailed along the spines, poetry, travel fiction, until she stopped at one with a yellowed cover, Letters to a Stranger. She opened it randomly. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is get out of bed. She closed the book slowly. The man behind the counter noticed. "That's a good one," he said. "Out of print for years." People forget how simple truth can sound. She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why we need books to remind us of what we already know." He nodded, thoughtful. "You'd be surprised how many people come here looking for reminders." She almost said, "I'm one of them," but didn't. Instead, she paid for the book, thanked him, and stepped back into the soft gray light outside. Lisa had already moved on to the bakery next door. The smell of fresh bread hit Emma as soon as she opened the door, warm, sweet, safe. She stood there a second too long, breathing it in. Lisa waved a croissant at her. "You're buying coffee next time." Emma smiled. "We'll see." As they walked back toward the car, raindrops began to fall slow, hesitant at first, then steadier. People ran for cover, but Emma didn't. She lifted her face to the sky and let the rain touch her skin. Lisa looked at her like she'd lost it. "You're getting soaked." "I know. Do you have a plan, or is this just your new thing, spontaneous rain therapy?" Emma laughed, her hair plastered to her forehead. "Maybe it's just nice to feel something that isn't loss." Lisa paused, then smiled softly. "There she is." By the time Emma got home, the rain had stopped. The air was clean, the sky washed pale. She placed the new book on her kitchen table and noticed the plant on the shelf greener now, leaves lifting toward the light. She made herself another cup of coffee. 2 mugs again out of habit. But this time she didn't put his back. She just left hers there, warm, alive, real. She sat by the window watching the street glisten with rain. Somewhere a car splashed through a puddle, and someone laughed. Emma opened the book to the page she'd marked and read the line again. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is get out of bed." She smiled, small but real. Today she had. And maybe tomorrow she'd go even further. The apartment wasn't much, but it was hers. When Emma first stepped inside, she almost laughed, a nervous, uncertain sound that echoed through the empty space. The air smelled faintly of paint and dust, and the light from the single window fell across the hardwood floor like a promise. This is where you start again. The realtor had called it charming. That was one way to say small and slightly crooked. The kitchen sink dripped, one cabinet door hung unevenly, and the old radiator made a noise like a sigh when it started. But Emma didn't care. She walked slowly from room to room, one bedroom, one living area, and a balcony just big enough for a chair and a cup of coffee. It wasn't silence she heard this time. It was potential. After the paperwork was signed, she bought a bucket of yellow paint on impulse. The man at the hardware store asked what shade she wanted. She pointed to the brightest one. "Something that looks like sunlight," she said. He smiled. "You sure you want that much cheer? I think I need it," she replied. The painting took 2 days. The first night she put on an old t-shirt, turned up the radio, and dipped the brush into the can. The smell of paint filled the room, sharp and new. With every stroke, the wall changed from dull beige to something alive. By midnight, there was more paint on her hands than on the wall. She sat down, looked at the half-finished yellow patch and smiled. For the first time in months, she was creating instead of cleaning up. The next morning, sunlight hit the wet paint, turning the whole room gold. It was imperfect, uneven in spots, but when she stepped back, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time: warmth. The building had character, which Emma learned meant quirky neighbors. There was Mrs. Alvarez on the second floor, who grew herbs on every windowsill and gave unsolicited life advice with each basil plant. There was a musician downstairs who practiced jazz trumpet at inconvenient hours. And then there was him, the man from the bookstore. She saw him again 3 days after moving in while hauling a heavy box of books up the narrow staircase. "Need a hand?" a voice asked. She turned. It was him holding a grocery bag in one arm, that same calm smile from the shop. "Bookstore guy," she blurted before she could stop herself. He laughed. "That's me. Daniel." "Emma," she said, shifting the box awkwardly. "I didn't realize you lived here." "3rd floor," he said. "And you're 4th. Well," he said, setting down his bag, "let's get those books home before your arms give up." They carried the box together quietly, comfortably. When they reached her door, Daniel looked around the apartment at the bright yellow wall still drying. "Wow," he said. "That's bold." She smiled, slightly embarrassed. "I was tired of beige." "It suits you," he said simply. Over the next few weeks, they ran into each other often in the hallway at the mailbox, sometimes at the corner cafe. Their conversations were short, unplanned, but steady, like steps toward something neither of them named. Once she found a small potted plant on her doorstep. A note tucked underneath read, "For the yellow room. Every color needs a little green." No signature, but she didn't need one. She placed the plant by the window where the light poured in. It thrived. Emma's days began to take shape again. She started waking up early, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She brewed her coffee, watered her plants, and played quiet music while she worked remotely from her kitchen table. Sometimes she'd hear Daniel typing upstairs, a rhythmic sound through the floorboards. She'd smile without realizing it. One Saturday, he knocked on her door. "Sorry," he said, holding up a loose wooden shelf. "Do you have a screwdriver? Mine disappeared." She handed him one, then offered to help. They ended up sitting on her living room floor, surrounded by screws and small talk. He told her he was a writer, freelance, mostly essays and travel pieces. He'd moved into the building last year, right after his own breakup. "So we're neighbors and veterans of emotional disasters," he joked. She laughed. "That's one way to put it." When the shelf was finally upright, Daniel leaned back and said, "You know it's nice, your place. It feels lived in already. It's messy." She said, "It's real," he replied. "That's better." Later that night, Emma sat by the window watching the city lights flicker in the distance. A soft breeze carried the faint sound of music from below the trumpet again, but slower this time, almost tender. She thought about how a few months ago the quiet had felt like punishment. Now it felt like peace. Her phone buzzed a text from Lisa. "You alive? Haven't heard from you in 2 days." Emma smiled. "Alive, painting, meeting people. A neighbor." He reads. There was a long pause before Lisa replied, "Oh no, don't you dare fall for a man who uses semicolons." Emma laughed out loud, a real full laugh that echoed through her apartment. Later, she turned off the lights and stood for a moment in the glow of the yellow wall, now illuminated by a single lamp. It made the room look like late afternoon, no matter the hour, soft, forgiving, full of life. She ran her hand across the surface, feeling the uneven texture under her fingertips. It wasn't perfect. Neither was she. But both were getting there. Before going to bed, she glanced once more at the little green plant by the window, the one Daniel had left. Its leaves had turned toward the light, reaching, stretching. Emma smiled. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Emma was sitting at her desk editing a report when her phone buzzed. The name on the screen froze her breath. Mark. For a moment, she just stared at it, as if the letters themselves were ghosts. She hadn't seen or spoken to him since the papers were signed, not because she hated him, but because silence had been easier, cleaner. The phone kept ringing. She could have ignored it. She almost did. But something inside her, the same quiet courage that had made her move, paint her wall, and open her heart again, made her swipe accept. "Hi," she said, her voice smaller than she meant. There was a pause, then a familiar voice. "Hey, Em." She closed her eyes. He used to say her name like that, soft, habitual. "I hope it's okay that I called," he said. "I just found something that's yours. Thought I should check before tossing it." "What is it? An old photo album? From when we went to Maine?" She remembered. The trip with the fog, the wooden cabin, the arguments that had started even then. She took a slow breath. "You can throw it away. Are you sure?" "Yes." Another pause. She could hear city sounds in the background, car horns, someone shouting. He was out there, still living just like she was. That felt strange and somehow comforting. "You sound good," he said finally. "Better." "I am," she answered. It wasn't pride, just truth. "I'm glad," he said. "I wanted to say that. You deserve something better than what we had." Emma stared out the window at the sunlight falling through the curtains, at the yellow glow on her walls. "We both do," she said quietly. They stayed on the line a few more seconds, two people who had loved and hurt each other now talking like old travelers who once shared a road. "Take care, Mark," she said. "You too, Em." When the call ended, she sat there for a long while, the silence settling gently around her. Not heavy this time, just still. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Something had closed softly like a door that no longer creaked. That evening, the sky broke open with rain again. The sound filled the apartment, soft, steady cleansing. Emma made tea, curled up on the couch, and let her thoughts drift. The memories came, but not like before. They didn't ache. They just existed, fragments of another life she no longer had to fix. A knock on the door pulled her back. She hesitated. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, Daniel stood there holding a small potted plant. Raindrops clung to his jacket. His hair was damp, his smile tentative. "Hi," he said. "I was walking by the flower shop, saw this and thought of your wall." Emma blinked, surprised. "Another plant?" "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "You looked like someone who could use a little green in her life." She smiled, the same words he'd written on that note weeks ago. "You're consistent." "I try." She stepped aside. "Come in before you melt." He laughed and followed her in, shaking the rain from his hair. The apartment felt warmer with him there. He looked around, the new books stacked near the sofa, the half-empty cup of tea, the glow of the yellow wall reflecting off the rain outside. "This place keeps changing every time I see it," he said. "So do I," she replied. He studied her face for a second quietly. "You seem lighter today." "I got a call," she said. "From Mark." His expression softened. "That must have been hard." "It was," she said, "but also not. I think we finally said what needed to be said. No anger, no regret. Daniel nodded slowly. Closure's underrated? Yeah. She smiled faintly. It's quieter than people think. Like a door closing in another room. They stood there for a moment, the rain whispering against the glass. Then Daniel placed the plant on the windowsill beside the first one. Now they have company, he said. Do you do this for all your neighbors? She teased. Only the ones with yellow walls, he said, grinning. She laughed, and the sound filled the room like light. They sat for a while talking about small things. Movies they loved, recipes they ruined, the strange way the city smelled before rain. It was easy, the kind of conversation that didn't ask for effort. At one point, Emma realized she hadn't checked the time in over an hour. When he finally stood to leave, the rain had stopped. At the door, Daniel hesitated. I know it's late, but there's this art fair downtown Saturday. Lots of bad paintings, good food, and awkward people. You should come. Emma tilted her head. Is that your way of asking me out? He smiled. Maybe it's my way of asking if you like art and bad food. She pretended to think. Depends on the company. Then I'll take my chances, he said. After he left, Emma leaned against the door for a moment, smiling into the quiet. The apartment glowed softly, the two green plants by the window, the yellow wall reflecting the last of the streetlight, the faint scent of rain still in the air. She walked over and touched the leaves of the new plants still wet from outside. Welcome home, she whispered. For the first time, the phrase didn't sound strange on her tongue. She looked out through the glass where the city shimmered slick and alive breathing. Her reflection stared back, not the woman who had once been left behind, but someone standing at the edge of something new. Not a beginning. Not exactly. Just continuation. Outside, the clouds began to part, revealing a thin slice of moon. Emma turned off the light, leaving only the soft yellow glow from the wall. It looked like morning, even in the dark. And for the first time, she didn't feel alone in it. A year later, Emma woke up to sunlight spilling across the yellow wall. The room was quiet, but not empty. The kind of quiet that holds life inside it. The soft clinking of a spoon against a mug, the sound of pages turning somewhere nearby, the low hum of the city waking up beyond the window. She stretched the sheets warm against her skin and smiled when she caught the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Morning, Daniel called. Morning. She answered, her voice still sleepy. He appeared at the door holding 2 mugs. You still take it black, still? She said, sitting up. Some habits survive the apocalypse. He grinned and handed her the cup. The light caught his face, that easy calm she'd grown used to, the kind that didn't try to fill silence, just shared it. The apartment had changed again, or maybe grown. There were books stacked in corners, a record player by the couch, mismatched mugs that had stories behind each one. The yellow wall remained through the same imperfect sunlit streak of warmth that had started it all. Near the window, 2 plants had turned into 5. They leaned toward the light like old friends. Emma had found a rhythm, not the frantic kind that used to fill her days, but a steady pulse that made space for breath, for laughter, for stillness. She worked from home 3 days a week, taught a writing class on Thursdays, and spent weekends exploring the city with Daniel art fairs, street markets, parks that smelled like wet grass and possibility. She'd learned to enjoy her own company again, even while sharing her life with someone else. That morning, Daniel sat beside her on the bed, sipping his coffee. You know what today is? He asked. She raised an eyebrow. Judging by your tone, I should. Moving day anniversary, he said. 1 year in the yellow apartment. Emma laughed. Should I bake a cake for the wall? Maybe just thank it for surviving all the bad movie nights. She nudged him playfully. You picked most of those movies, and you fell asleep during all of them. I was meditating. she said. He smiled, then grew quiet. You know, you've made this place beautiful. Emma looked around. It helped make me beautiful again, I think. Later, she stepped out onto the small balcony with her coffee. The air was cool, the kind of spring morning that promises more than it delivers, and she loved it for that. Below the city moved buses, footsteps, snippets of conversation floating upward. Life everywhere. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, the one who sat in an empty house measuring her days by what she had lost. That woman had believed her story was over. This one knew it had just changed genres. She went back inside, found her journal on the table, and opened it to a blank page. Writing had become a small ritual, not for remembering, but for noticing. She wrote, "Healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in mornings like this, quiet, unremarkable, full of light. It comes in laughter that doesn't hurt, in someone's hand brushing yours without fear. It comes when you stop waiting for happiness to return and start building it instead." She stared at the words for a long time, then closed the journal gently. That afternoon, she and Daniel walked to the farmer's market near the river. The air smelled like strawberries and rain. Vendors shouted greetings, a street musician played something soft on guitar, and the world felt almost too alive. Daniel picked up a bunch of sunflowers from a stall. "For the wall," he said. "Of course," Emma replied, smiling. They wandered through the stalls, stopping to taste honey, to pet a stranger's dog, to argue good-naturedly about which bread smelled better. It was nothing extraordinary, and yet it was, because for the first time in years, the ordinary felt like a gift. On their way home, they passed the small bookstore, the same one where they'd first met. The bell above the door chimed as they stepped inside. The smell of paper ink and quiet nostalgia wrapped around them. The shelves hadn't changed, but Emma had. Daniel went to look for a travel book, while she wandered to the poetry section. Her fingers brushed the spine of Letters to a Stranger, the same yellowed copy she had bought that day, still sitting on her nightstand at home. She opened it again, turning to the same line she had underlined a year ago. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is get out of bed. She smiled, not wistfully, but gratefully. That line had once felt like a survival manual. Now it felt like a quiet reminder of how far she'd come. Daniel returned holding 2 books. "You find something?" "Just an old friend," she said, tapping the cover. That evening, as the sun dipped low, their apartment glowed like liquid gold. Daniel cooked badly, while Emma leaned against the counter laughing at his attempt to rescue a burning pan. "Don't you dare order takeout," he said. "I'm just documenting this for evidence," she teased, snapping a photo. The smoke alarm beeped once, then gave up. They both dissolved into laughter. It wasn't perfection. It was better real. Later, after dinner, they sat on the floor backs against the yellow wall plates still half full beside them. The city hummed softly outside. Emma looked at Daniel, at the life they'd built quietly, unintentionally, through 100 small choices that added up to love. "I used to think happiness would feel louder," she said. He turned toward her. "And now I think it just feels like this." He reached for her hand, their fingers fitting without effort. Outside, a car passed its headlights, sweeping across the room, catching the curve of her smile. The yellow glow behind them, the green leaves by the window. The world kept moving, but Emma didn't need to chase it anymore. She had caught up. The next morning, she woke early before the alarm before the city. The air was pale and soft, the kind of morning that asked for nothing but presence. She looked at Daniel sleeping beside her, at the light gathering slowly on the yellow wall, at the plants reaching toward the sun. She thought about all the mornings behind her, the lonely ones, the painful ones, the ones that had felt impossible. And she whispered not to anyone in particular, but to herself, to the room, to the universe that had carried her here, this time, I'm not starting over. I'm just continuing.